Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a Thanksgiving episode of The Gold Standard with Alan Mosley. And here's your host, Alan Mosley.
Guys, welcome back for another episode of The Gold Standard. I am your host, Alan Mosley. As always, can I at least get through the intro before you start your BS?
Give it a shot.
Okay.
Give it a shot.
You can follow us on social media, which is facebook.com/TGS Alan Mosley. By the way, that's also where we debut the premieres each week's episode. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right.
That's right.
It's Wednesday nights.
So people should pay attention.
At 8 Central.
That's right, 8 Central.
9 o'clock Eastern Time. 7 o'clock Mountain Time for some people that we won't name who may or may not be on the program here in a few minutes. Yeah.
Okay. I get it.
So, because you remember from a couple of weeks ago, we had gotten a message from a guy that was basically saying, I can't find your show anywhere. Do you do it in podcast? Like, do you do it in audio?
Okay.
And I was like, dude, we've been on we've been on that for
years.
Yeah.
Years.
Literally at this point. Yeah, actually.
Where do you live?
Yeah, I don't know. I think he was out in the West Coast, but he was upset because he couldn't figure out when the show came on.
Okay.
Which, I mean, it's always on YouTube. Yeah. But he couldn't figure out when the show came on. So he's like, well, look, I'll just listen to it on my podcast.
Okay.
On my podcast catcher.
Yeah.
But you're not there. And I was like, au contraire, my friend.
Yeah, we're everywhere.
If you search The Gold Standard with Alan Mosley or TGS Alan Mosley on
right.
basically every website on the internet, you'll find us.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. I don't understand what the problem was.
Except Amazon.
Well, we're not on Amazon
yet.
We should sell stuff.
We definitely should sell
Why
stuff.
are you not using this camera anymore? We've talked about this. And you know what? I actually did something. I did something when you were here.
What did you do?
You see, I kind of I fixed it a little bit, and I got it a little bit more.
No, it looks really good. You're even scarier in this camera.
I know. Look at that. I did that just for you, and you won't use the camera. Why do we even have
Because
them?
I'm lazy. That's why. I'm just totally lazy.
All right. Well, no, we're back here now. Go back to the other one.
There it is.
All right.
I never know when to switch, I can't tell if you're looking. I always wait for you to go on a big rant and just rant with rage and angst in that camera. Then I switch to that camera. That's your rage and angst camera.
I'm trying to pull back on that because of blood pressure and
Sure.
Okay, so here's the secret to know when to switch the cameras.
Okay.
So you see me, right?
I see you right there, but you keep looking off to your right, yeah.
Which means you should switch the camera!
How many times do you want me to switch this camera? Oh, you're wearing me out, man.
You know I've been under the weather the last week or so.
You have been sick as a dog.
I've been crawling in here all miserable and stuff.
I'm afraid to walk in that room. I'm going to wear a hazmat suit and spray Lysol everywhere.
I should do like the Asian people do and wear the little... Because they're very conscientious of they're around a lot of other people and germs and stuff. We're not conscientious at all.
Do you know you can actually get those masks monogrammed?
We just go we just do that. So anyway, so you can actually see which camera I'm looking at, and that's how you know.
Right.
That's how you know. Exactly. Right. So Twitter is at Alan M. Mosley, but you don't have to do any of that. You could just go to our website. This has been the longest intro we've had in a while.
Yeah.
Anyway, you don't have to do it. You go to our website, which is thegoldstandardpodcast.com. Also, consider supporting the show by joining our Patreon, which is patreon.com/TGS Alan Mosley. I bet Suzanne's already left. I bet she's already. We've already.
I think she's there somewhere.
Yeah, she's
there.
But before
I'm still here.
Oh my God! Yeah, Suzanne's here.
We're gonna go with this.
So hold on, Suzanne. Blake, did I tell you that we got some fan mail?
We got fan mail. Somebody cares.
We got some fan mail.
Okay.
Check this out.
Okay.
Check this out. Look at our fan mail. I'm going to read this to you. Suzanne, I know you're there. Listen to this. I listened to your show, and if you think we should just let everyone in our country, then nuts. Why should we have to pay for all these mongrels that their own country didn't want? ? If it were your way, there wouldn't be any America left to be worth defending.
I defend all the time.
Yeah, not everyone wants to lose their history and water down their children like you. And that thing in your profile pic, go back to whatever place she came from and live there.
Ah, racism at its finest.
You know, our friend Sherry actually commented on this, that I'm proud that he's not allowing his functional illiteracy to get in the way of his racism.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, you know, when I say your, I say all the time.
Yeah, defetting definitely was the best part of that.
Yes.
So that's just, that is what you get when you try to make a podcast right there. Yeah, that's
all that sweet love.
By the way, let's talk about it. We didn't talk about our friends last week.
Okay, let's talk about our friends.
So first of all, there's the Status Quo Podcast, which is at thestatusquo.net.
Yep.
Episode 56, Embracing the Suck. Matt sits down with our buddy Chuck, an Army Iraq War vet, to discuss Iraq deployment and struggles we've had afterwards. We also discuss a project he has in the works that I'm super stoked about, a podcast series on PTSI, moral injury, and how those affected have overcome it. I'm kicking myself I didn't come up with it first. Keep an eye out for that. We will be promoting it when it comes out. So that's episode 56 from the Status Quo Podcast, Embracing the Suck.
Embracing the suck.
We know a thing about that here
at
the Gold Standard. That's right.
We're rolling it every day.
Also, there's our friends at The Other 3%, which you can find on Facebook at The Other 3%, or Me Moore's episode 5, The Other 3% Strikes Back. So, Suzanne, you're welcome to join us on this one, because we were talking about this a little bit before the show. So, The Other 3% guys sent me this. It's Senate Bill number 64 that's up in session over at our northern neighbors in Virginia. I used to have a history teacher that would, of course, he was a history teacher, so he liked to talk about how, like, 80% of all American history just took place in Virginia. Virginia, that's how he said it. Well, Virginia is not making good history nowadays, because Senate Bill number 64, this is what they're trying to do. A person is guilty of unlawful paramilitary activity punishable as a Class 5 felony if he... So it won't apply to Suzanne because Suzanne's a she.
Right.
Only to he's. Right. I think I'm reading that correctly, right, Suzanne?
Men only.
Did you assume my gender?
Ooh, I'm sorry. Well, let's take a step back. Teaches or demonstrates to any other person the use, application, or making of any firearm, explosive, or incendiary device, or technique capable of causing injury or death to persons, knowing or having reason to know or intending that such training will be employed for use in or in furtherance of a civil disorder. Now, Suzanne, you've never done anything to further civil disorder, have you?
Not enough.
Not enough.
You know, I actually have a certification from the National Rifle Association in firearms instruction, and I have taught the Boy Scouts at our local ward up here. So if I had done such activities within the state of Virginia now, I would be a felon and prohibited for the rest of my days from legally, as we discussed earlier, ever handling a firearm. This is a particularly nefarious law because what they're doing is foreclosing the possibility of teaching youngsters, particularly firearm safety. Those are the ones, if you have firearms in the house, you want to teach them how to handle a firearm, what to do when they're around. Should they find one, leave it alone, or if in the alternative, if they do have to move it or do something with it, how to handle it and not touch the trigger, how to have muzzle control. That will make you apparently a Class 5 felon, and under that federal statute, you would be prohibited from ever legally having a firearm. This is very concerning.
Now, there's a couple of other parts of that. I want to finish reading it really quick before we go back. Assemblies with one or more persons for the purpose of training, with practicing with or being instructed in the use of any firearm, explosive, or incendiary device, or technique capable of causing injury or death to persons intending to employ such training for use in or in furtherance of a civil disorder. And the last one is, there's another one about assemblies. Assemblies with one or more persons with the intent of intimidating any person or group of persons by drilling, parading, or marching with any firearm, any explosive or incendiary device, or any components or combination thereof. So the two things that kind of stand out from that bill for me, Suzanne, is one, if they're cracking down on assemblies that are meant or that are intended to intimidate. Now you're a lawyer, so you can instruct us on this. How do you even go about proving or disproving the intent to intimidate if we get together a group of activists and we decide we're gonna put on a march, and we're going to march down the street and we're going to hold up signs saying, no more red shirts. We don't like people who wear red shirts, so no more red shirts. Couldn't that be construed as intending to intimidate?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, you can come together as a group and say, look, we are going to take out our long rifles. We can open carry and still be behaving in a manner in accordance with open carry laws. But we have a desire, our intention is to educate, not intimidate. Well, those that are opposing your behavior can make I love this garbage bin of rhetoric called the totality of the circumstances argument. Well, taking into consideration the totality of the circumstances, one can infer that the only logical reason these people would be behaving in such a manner is to intimidate others. So it's a lose-lose proposition for you, in my opinion.
Now, the one last thing I wanted to highlight before we take our first commercial break is back in that first section, this particular line, a technique capable of causing injury or death to persons. Isn't that like almost every human action a person can take? Like theoretically...
The purpose of using a firearm, particularly in your home, is self-defense. The other thing that's interesting here is they talk about civil disorder. Well, what could civil disorder be? It could be rioting. It could be causing, some sort of protest. It could be protesting against your government, defending yourself against your government. That was the heart and soul of the Second Amendment and the point of having it in the first place.
Yeah, exactly. So that's our intro segment went kind of long today, but as you probably could have already guessed, after we come back from the commercial break, Blake, are you still awake? I'm still there. Okay. I'm pretty sure Blake fell asleep right then.
No, I'm having a little bit of difficulty with the video switcher, but we're doing okay. Keep going.
We're doing okay, or you're doing okay?
You're doing okay. I'm struggling over here, but we're okay.
Okay. Well, you were really quiet there for a little while, and I looked over. So for people, we actually, but by the way, in our last postcards from Somalia, I actually picked up my camera and I did a little tilt so people could see the studio a little bit. So people who don't realize this, Blake is in a producer's booth, but I can see his booth from where I'm sitting.
Right. That's why you keep looking off to your right.
But when I looked over there, my left.
Your left.
Nice try, though.
But when people are watching you, it looks like you're looking to the right.
Well, I don't know if they're autistic or not, but it's my left. So, but I looked over and I couldn't see you. I actually leaned over like this, and I was like, Blake's gone.
No, I'm not gone.
Blake's
I'm here.
Left the show. Suzanne, you were so boring. Blake quit.
No. Not true.
That's not true. Guys, we will be right back. Now, see, I'm looking at this camera, Blake. Jesus Christ, Blake.
Be nice.
It's Thanksgiving.
I know.
You're ruining my Thanksgiving. Guys, we will be right back after this commercial break. Hey, did you see the playoff games last weekend?
Oh, you're into the sports ball game.
Sports Ball with Mike Meharry and Alan Mosley. SportsBallPodcast.com.
Sports ball is not a libertarian sports show. It's a sports show done by a couple of libertarians.
For when you need your bread and circuses.
Your ad could be playing right now, reaching thousands of potential customers. Sadly, it's not, but it could be. Find out how to be an advertised sponsor for The Gold Standard with Alan Mosley. Email us at tgsalanmosley@gmail.com.
Okay, we're back.
Blake quit again.
No.
If anybody noticed like that 7 seconds of black after the commercial.
That wasn't 7 seconds. Come on.
You were just gone.
I was trying to get back in my chair. There's only 2 minutes there. Come on. I'm trying to fix a mechanical problem over here. Blasted gear.
Fixing a mechanical problem.
Hey, it's just technical issues. Not my fault.
He was. That's what he was doing.
No, I wasn't. Look, I
Guys,
can do this. Look at that.
Okay.
It's working now.
You showed off.
It's
All
working.
Right. Guys, welcome back to the show. Our guest today is the host of Suzanne Sherman's The Wasatch Report over on Cerberus Radio Network, which also, by the way, syndicates The Gold Standard. Yep. So that's how you know they're going out of business. That's how you know.
I know.
But so we're very happy to do that. So people may have noticed from weeks past, ever since we have been on your network, we've been doing a better job of watching our language.
Yeah.
And if I ever come close to having a slip up, I take that as an opportunity to say, hey, since I almost swore, this is a great time to say, check out Suzanne Sherman's The Wasatch Report over on Cerberus. That's how I do it.
And we get tons of publicity from that one. Thank you.
Well, you're very welcome. So, guys, Suzanne Sherman, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, my friend.
Now, this is I don't know. This is probably like 2 weeks late, but you know, if it's new to you, isn't that what NBC used to say about all their like summer reruns? It's new to you. So this was an article that you wrote that was talking about a case involving Remington Arms, and that was associated with the Florida school shooting, right?
Yeah.
It was the stadium shooting. So this was published at the 10th Amendment Center, a blow to gun manufacturers, but a win for federalism. So Suzanne, break down for us how is that? How is this a blow to gun manufacturers, but a win for federalism?
Well, this is also tied back into the Sandy Hook Elementary School in Newton, Connecticut. And what happened was some parents and family members of the 20 children and 6 adults that were murdered in this shooting rampage are filing a lawsuit in state court, state of Connecticut court, based on a Consumer Protection Act. Again, we're talking about a state court. And they are predicating this on marketing, not the fact that we're talking about the firearm acting in a manner or behave or doing this in a manner in which it was intended, performing in a manner in which it was intended. I beg your pardon. And it's not that kind of a product liability case. It is based on marketing. So what they're saying is that Remington's marketing and placement of these AR-15s, the Bushmaster, was what, as it was directed at targeted or at-risk youth, was a result of the proximate cause of this shooting rampage. Now, the state court of Connecticut, the Supreme Court, has allowed that to go forth. So Remington Arms was seeking a dismissal at the United States Supreme Court level, seeking protection from a 2005 law, which is called the Gun Protection Act, also the 2005 Protection of Lawful Commerce and Arms Act. So what they're saying is, Remington's saying, look, this is a product that is marketed, it did what it was intended to do. We are not liable for the criminal behavior of third parties. But this consumer protection law is saying, well, you know what, you're marketing this in a way that promotes unlawful activity. So this is really not a federal matter. This is a matter that should be properly adjudicated before the state of Connecticut. The Supreme Court properly denied to hear this case. And by doing so, if they had heard it, they would be saying, well, you know what, we're going to deny an entire class of plaintiffs an opportunity to be heard based on the fact that we don't like Remington Arms or gun manufacturers. If they had said, you know, we're going to allow this to be heard. When we have federalism, different states can have different meanings of, or different resolutions on how these cases are going to be heard. Some states might say, we don't want this to be heard at all. The problem is the anti-gun enthusiasts have come up with a means by which they know they can hurt the firearms manufacturers. So we might have a devastating jury verdict, for instance, in one of these states, and then that could destroy the arms manufacturers. This was a really difficult article for me to write because I can't come up with a 10th Amendment solution to this other than to say this is a good outcome for federalism. Ultimately, the gun grabbers know how to hurt the firearms manufacturers. And all I'm saying is here the Supreme Court properly denied hearing this case because they could have denied an entire class of potential plaintiffs the opportunity to be heard.
Now you're setting the stage for us because you and I had talked about this off the program, and we're going to kind of get deep in the weeds here in a minute. But to kind of finish setting the stage, now I know that there's people at home listening, and they're saying, well, but wait a minute, my Second Amendment, they're infringing upon my Second Amendment. Now, why does that not apply here?
Because, first of all, the Second Amendment only applies to the general government, meaning Congress, infringing upon the pre-existing right to keep and bear arms. So the problem with this also, I wrote an article about AR-15s and how they're trying to ban these AR-15s, because if you read this article, there's a law professor, a constitutional law professor, that thinks not only should these cases be heard and prosecuted, but AR-15s in general should be banned. And he cites Scalia and Heller, where Scalia says in his explanation of the Second Amendment that it applies to handguns for use in the home because they are commonly in use, they're easy to use, and so on and so forth. Where Scalia gets it wrong is the Second Amendment applies to the general government. So going back to the case we talked about in Virginia, this Virginia law is not an infringement upon the Second Amendment, but I would look to Virginia's Constitution, again, because the general government doesn't have this authority. It rests with the states. So we have to see if Virginia's law is violating their own Constitution. So, this whole thing of federalism here, I disagree with taking these manufacturers to court in the state courts. Ultimately, the end run is to try and bankrupt these companies, and that is problematic. The states are the proper forum to do that. What we have to do is fight these in the states with an educated jury pool and get them defeated to try to dissuade these potential plaintiffs from bringing these suits forth. The only conclusion I could come up with is you better get what you want while you can when it comes to guns, because it's only getting more and more difficult.
Now, I'm going to play devil's advocate here for a moment or two before we get into the more philosophical side of things. Now, I think there's a lot of people out there that are saying, like, look, I hear you, Suzanne. I'm all for state sovereignty. I'm all for federalism. But I'm really afraid that all it's going to take is one. All it's going to take is one activist judge or kangaroo court in some left of center state demographically to come out with some just ridiculous ruling or settlement, and it's going to, that's going to open up Pandora's box to now you're going to be seeing lawsuits in all 50 states. Every interest group that's anti-gun is going to be hiring up lawyers and trying to, because they're going to have the blueprint, right? Like there's a chance that they could open the door and then they're going to have the blueprint, and then you're going to be seeing this all across the country. I mean, is that a serious concern?
That's a very legitimate concern, but the problem is, again, when you legitimize usurpations of constitutional authority and overreach by the general government, where do you draw the line? We've already allowed them so much power already, and I just see this case as yet one more example of running to the Supreme Court to resolve issues that should never properly be before them. This is a 10th Amendment issue. Remember, the 10th Amendment very clearly says that the powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution or prohibited to the states are reserved to the states or to the people. So the 10th Amendment really has to take precedence here, because what happens once we start nationalizing everything, we end up with the Supreme Court adjudicating social policy issues for over 350 million people. That is not a representative form of government.
Now, of course, we believe in natural rights on this program, and you don't hear us talking about my magic napkin, the Constitution, very often on the gold standard. And this is the reason. This is one of the reasons why this sort of case. But to stay within the constitutional sphere, let me ask you this question, or more voice this concern. I think what even ardent defenders of the Constitution, even your constitutional conservatives, which I don't think those really exist, but those types, my 3%ers, my don't tread on me's, all those types that still think the system can work, but it needs to be properly enforced. It needs to be properly applied. I guess my biggest concern is that it seems to me that our political opponents, people who view the Constitution as a stumbling block when it's in their way, but they could weaponize it when they can get something they want. They don't have to play by the rules. So when you're trying to apply the Constitution, the letter of the law down to the syllable, and you believe in things like state sovereignty and federalism, you're willing to take this. You're willing to take this Remington case, take the L, as they would say it, because it's a win for federalism. But your political opponents, they'll be happy to take the win here, but if the Constitution doesn't serve them on some other case down the road, then they'll just fight against it. All they have to find is just enough members of Congress who can support their agenda, and they'll apply the Constitution when it helps their agenda, and they'll ignore the Constitution when it doesn't. So it seems to me like it's just a zero-sum game. You just can't win if you're playing by the rules.
Well, this is why I am a staunch supporter of the anti-federalists. Patrick Henry said he smelled a rat. When I first got into this, I was a staunch defender of the Constitution, and we have to just get back to the Constitution. And the more I started doing my research and the more I started revisiting the cases that I was taught in law school, I started realizing, I think rather than seeing this, as I refer to now, as the holy parchment and something that was divinely inspired, I never ascribed to that, by the way, but I'm seeing it more as a Trojan horse, and it is doing what it was intended to do. So primarily my discussion about federalism is just to try to bring the mainstream into understanding, look, you're seeking national solutions for issues that were intended to be resolved by the state. Once you start seeing the futility of doing so with regards to an overreaching federal judiciary, I advise people to read Government by Judiciary by Raoul Berger. And when you see how the states themselves have surrendered principles of the 10th Amendment, you kind of wonder, well, how are we ever going to get back on track? And that's where I can only come to the conclusion is I think that is doing exactly what it was intended to do, create a general government that was central, strong, national in nature, which was rejected at the Philadelphia Convention. And the states have fully capitulated to it. On my show this morning, we were talking about the grants and civil asset forfeiture, the marijuana laws, Interstate 80 out here. They've been having a feeding frenzy on cash and marijuana right out here on the road that I drive. I see them all over the place. Why? Because it is really good money. They got a lot of money from the federal government. They have this program called equitable sharing where they split the proceeds from civil asset forfeiture. If you and I got together and conspired how to get money from citizens at gunpoint, we would be going to prison. Yeah. But when they do it, they call it equitable and sharing when it's neither.
Yeah, of course, I'm an anarchist, and I've made no secret of that on this program. But this is just more evidence to me that I'm on the right path, because when you look at the state, and if you say the state as represented by the federal government, if you say the state as represented by, say, your state government, or even possibly the state as represented by your local township or whatever, it's just so much, isn't it? Like there's just so much government, there's so much bureaucracy, there's so many laws, so much regulation, and I know I'm preaching to the choir, but it's one of those things where it's when you look at it in practical terms of, okay, well, we're going to put on our fighting caps today, and we're going to work within the system to try to enact change. And I know that there's people that do that, and I admire their conviction, but you don't see me trumpeting those types of causes very often. And the main reason is I just think as long as the state exists, you're always sliding backwards. A good friend of mine who ironically enough was also a lawyer. There's just so many of you blood-sucking types, I swear. But he had made the comment to me that folks, you're the stereotypical conservative or constitutionalist, they're always on the defensive, and they have to be ready to go to battle 100% of the time, because your opponents can file lawsuits. Your opponents can lobby Congress for X and Y. And they can introduce that bill again and again and again and again to further their agenda to infringe upon your rights. And if it gets voted down, they'll try it again. But all they got to do is get it once, right? If they get it once, then they've got their foot in the door, the precedent is set, and as I'm sure you would agree, once something has been passed, once a ruling has been made, once the precedent has been set that something is no longer a right or whatever, then it's way harder to come back from that than it is to defeat the vote the first time.
And the conservatives are very guilty in putting forth this misinformation when they start, waving their flag, stomping their feet, and talking about their Second Amendment rights. And this plays directly into the hands of those that want to constrict our rights, because the general government they love it when we say stuff like this, because if you say what the Bill of Rights actually are, is a bill of restrictions against the general government, there's no wiggle room there. They're not going to come out and say, well, we were prohibited expressly from regulating in these areas, but we're going to be doing it because. So what they say instead, and we fall into this trap, Well, our Second Amendment rights are not absolute. Rights are subject to reasonable regulation, and you get this garbage about, yelling fire in a crowded theater or what kind of guns are protected by the Second Amendment. And again, no guns are protected by the Second Amendment. I've gone on AM radio stations out here when the host starts talking about Second Amendment rights, and I just said there's no such thing. And they look at me, what? There's no such thing as a Second Amendment right. When you say that there are Second Amendment rights or First Amendment rights, this is where the politicians love it. Well, we can regulate these rights. No rights are absolute. Restrictions are.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's exactly why people should be saying their natural right to self-defense. It's not up for discussion. Well, I was just about to ask you. So that at the end of the day, though, if we're talking practical politics, now, like you and I would just. People say you don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. I disagree. I would love to. But now you and I would start, we would burn this mother down and start over. But if we're talking practical politics, we want to enact some realistic change, say in the next election cycle. So you would still believe that federalism is a superior way to go than other options, or is a more realistic way? It would at least be superior if you did have states where, well, we don't want to have these gun manufacturers advertising or promoting their products within our states, and you could say, well, I don't believe in that, but at least other states don't enact those policies, and so people can at least vote with their feet, right?
Yeah, you have a place to go. I mean, that was the point of my article on national reciprocity, because we have this massive disparity of regulations from one state to another with regards to the issuance of concealed carry permits, for instance. And if we have a National Reciprocity Act enforced upon us, well, then what's going to happen to the people of California, where you have to take a 2-day course and are very unlikely to issue permits, are going to take exception to people like me from the state of Utah, where it's a shall issue state. In fact, I don't even have a permit. You can open carry here. So what does that mean? Can I open carry there? Are we just going to negate our state borders entirely? Because what's going to happen, and this is where I've debated with other gun advocates, gun right advocates, well, the Supreme Court will go and hammer out the details. Well, that's just great. So now you've got 9 black robe messiahs who are going to say, well, we're going to decide how the license are going to be issued in the first place, since California is not happy about the different standards. And so expect on a nationwide basis, pardon my French, we're going to have standards for issuance of these more on the lines of California, New York, and Illinois, as opposed to Utah, Wyoming, or Texas, or Arizona. And that should be of great concern to all of us. At least with federalism, we have some safe haven in place to go. We don't if everything's going to be a national solution, particularly if you look at the propaganda that's been going forth in the schools, the nationalizations of the schools, in the media, as well as brainwashing people against firearms. So every solution is now going to be national. Look at how even the so-called constitutional conservatives are cheering on this, making animal cruelty a federal felony.
Yes.
Very slippery slip. Mia Farrow has already come out now, it's on Breitbart, saying that Donald Trump's family better understand that hunting is now prohibited because that's considered animal cruelty. Well, once we're no longer allowed to hunt, I guess we don't need those hunting rifles that the gun grabbers say that's the only reason behind the Second Amendment. Very, very egregious examples of federal overreach here, and the wrong parties are cheering this on for the wrong reasons.
Now, I wanted to say really quick. So my favorite is judicial temple monkeys. That's what my hairy cousin. That's my favorite for the Supreme Court.
I think we got that from Brian Balcom. I love that one.
Yeah, that's definitely my favorite. Well, I always shake my head. I couldn't help but shake my head when you were talking just now. That anybody who thinks that, well, if you and I can't come to an agreement, then the default is send it to the Supreme Court. They'll figure it out. Can you name me one person who fought in the American Revolution? Can you name me one person who supported the Articles of Confederation? Can you name me one founding father who genuinely thought, well, if free people can't come to an agreement, we'll let 9 lawyers decide what to do?
We went to a war to get out from under this system of parliamentary sovereignty, where everything the government did was de facto legal. And this is what we're seeing now. Even when it's blatantly unconstitutional, blatantly illegal, conservatives are cheering it on because they like the policy. This is what we have been complaining about the left doing for the past 100 years, yet now when there's a cause such as puppies, all of a sudden we embrace it. Mark my words, what is going to be the definition of animal cruelty? Is hunting going to be the definition? Are they going to have people out there with cameras? And if you don't nail that animal and kill it on the first shot, most of my kills, I hunt large game, and it sometimes takes more than one shot to kill them. What if somebody videos that? Am I going to be charged with a felony because somebody thinks that that's cruel? You put the wrong people in charge to make these decisions, and that's very well what's going to happen. You know, Jeff mentioned on my show today, doesn't this seem to coincide with the introduction of these meatless burgers now in fast foods?
Yes, I've seen that. You know, we've actually, so me and Sherry have actually talked about that. What do they call it? The Impossible Whopper. What is it called, Blake?
Yeah, the Impossible Whopper.
I've been tempted.
It's disgusting.
I've been tempted to get one and bring it onto the show and like eat it on like.
I think it's made from garbage.
Yeah, I don't know what they make those from, but I wanted to say one more quick thing before we take our final commercial break is, and I'm kind of playing devil's advocate to myself here, in that I said, well, you know, with lack of any other better option, let's stick with federalism for a little while longer. But I'll tell you why. At the end of the day, I just can't do it. I just can't do it, and this is the main reason why. If you're sticking with federalism, then you're pinning your hopes on the idea that, yes, some states will be different than other states, but you can vote with your feet. You can go to a state that is more amenable to your way of life and your beliefs. But demographics change, Suzanne. Demographics change. Politics. Politics change.
They do.
And
not only that. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to say,
that,
in the state of Tennessee, you know, Tennessee has been a red state forever, but you know, the Nashville area, it's always around your big cities. You know, the Nashville area leans blue. Obviously, Memphis is heavily blue. Knoxville area leans blue. I mean, as populations change, as demographics change, Tennessee is already really more of a purple state already than a red state. Look at Texas. Texas is actually not, this is probably pretty frightening for any listeners at home that are from Texas, although they probably full well know this. Texas is not that far away from not just being a red state anymore. Would you have believed, say, 30 years ago that Texas would go blue?
And this is the problem. And ultimately, the end game of federalism, it's not going to win because every state, no matter how sparse the population, has a center of the seat of government where there's going to be that state university. And then these are the people, when they all congregate in that same area, they are the driving force behind the upcoming legislation. I submit to you, we are going to be one party nation. I hate that term, but that's exactly what we're going to be. And there's not going to be a safe haven. And it's really why I moved to the mountains, because I see this whole thing come crashing down. The real solutions are nullification, they are secession, decentralization. But even if you have all these decentralized little mini states within the United States, I think that because of all the 100 years of indoctrination, nationalized school systems, public education, we want this government. We want people telling us how to live our lives. Alan, there's a reason we have like 0.00001% of the market share of people wanting to hear what we have to say. And ultimately, we don't have a message that they want because they want solutions within the government. When you try to introduce them to concepts such as voluntarism, because anarchy might even be too much for them to try and grasp, they don't want that.
No.
So, you know, if the majority wants what you've got, you're going to have to give it up. Ultimately, I don't see there being any safe haven. That's why I'm in the mountains.
That's why Suzanne's in the mountains. So, Suzanne, stay with us really
Maybe
quick.
We should all go to the mountains.
Yeah,
Let's all go. Come on up.
Yeah, I know. Well, I've seen your compound, but that might be considered an assembly So
yeah, be careful.
If Utah adopts Virginia's bill, then we're all getting a Class 5 felony.
Stuck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Suzanne, stay with us. Stay with us. We're going to take our last commercial break, and then after the commercial break, we're gonna do a little Thanksgiving roundup.
Sounds good.
All right. We'll be right back.
Have you ever been talking politics with a friend and told, if you don't like it here, you should just move to Somalia?
Well, ladies and gentlemen, from the sandy beaches of Mogadishu, Sherry and I bring you Postcards from Somalia, one of the newer products of Little L Productions, where we take on all of the fallacies of the people who say, if you don't like it, you can just get out. Your ad could be playing right now, reaching thousands of potential customers. Sadly, it's not, but it could be. Find out how to be an advertised sponsor for The Gold Standard with Alan Mosley. Email us at tgsalanmosley@gmail.com. So, guys, we're back in this final section of the show. This is our Thanksgiving episode.
Yeah.
So we're gonna go around the room.
Okay.
Me, Suzanne, and Blake, and we're all gonna take a moment to say a thing or two that we're thankful for Thanksgiving. But I want to tell on Suzanne really quick. Right before the end of the commercial break, she said, "Well, I'm in good health and I love my family. My stuff's boring."
I don't think it's boring. That's good. That's wholesome.
That's boring.
Wholesome.
I wish I hated them. That's spicier. So I'm going to start with Blake. So Blake, what are you thankful for this year?
I'm thankful for family. Honestly, I mean, I know that sounds boring, and I'm on.
Blake's boring too. Yeah.
I'm boring. I'm thankful for health and happiness with my family and everything. And nobody's sick or dying anymore.
Whoa! Nobody's sick or dying anymore.
Yeah. Keep going.
Okay. So, Suzanne, what are you thankful for this year?
I have a lot of friends, and my mom's quite ill. And the more I see what's going on with some of my friends, the more thankful I really am for health. And that is in all seriousness. I feel that I'm very blessed at this stage of my life to still be as active as I am, and I don't take that for granted. And I'm thankful for my friends on the Gold Standard.
No,
well, that's very nice. Notice Blake didn't say he was thankful for the show or me at all. That was not a part of Blake's.
Hey,
thing.
Your family?
No.
Yeah.
Well, no.
That's a nice try, Blake.
No, hold on. If you saw our fan mail from earlier in the show, actually, me and Annika are ruining America.
No, you're not.
So no, we're not family.
You can't ruin something's already rotten.
Yeah, that's ooh. Yeah. Blake's being spicy over there. Ooh. You know what? I'm really thankful for my friends and family. You guys here at the studio and the official girlfriend of the Gold Standard, Anna Kay. We're not actually going to be leaving the country just yet. Okay. You know what's funny? If that guy would send me the money to leave the country, me and Anna Kay would go.
Yeah, you'd have a great trip.
If you'll pay for it, guy out there, we'll leave.
Yeah. We'll keep doing the podcast, but
I'm still going to do the show.
Sure.
I'm still going to do the show. Yeah. In fact, that's going to make that guy our lead sponsor.
Yeah, we'll go someplace with a better internet connection.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, but I'm definitely thankful for all the people out there in the internet sphere, out there around the world who have supported the show and sometimes we might say things that they agree with, and sometimes we might say things that they don't agree with because they're hypocrites.
Right.
No, I'm just kidding. I mean, I'm not just kidding, but
no.
I'm actually telling the truth. Yeah. But I'm serious though. I'm thankful for people who actually tune in every week for about 40 minutes or so. Actually, they really only tune in for about 10 or 15 minutes. I think for most people, they either, if they like the guest, they just skip to the guest,
right?
Or they catch the intro of the show because that's when you and I will yell at each other, and then they turn the show off.
Right.
I'm pretty sure that's the only people. I'm pretty sure that's the only thing people watch.
But hey, you gotta love our viewers.
I do love our viewers. I even love that guy. I even love that one guy. I do. I do.
Because that one guy rules.
I didn't tell you this. I didn't tell you this before we started the show, or I didn't tell Suzanne either. Suzanne, have you seen that Mr. Rogers movie that's out? That A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood?
I have not. Have you?
Me and Anna Kay went to go see it on Saturday.
Wow.
Was it good?
So first of all, yeah, it was pretty good. And I've decided I'm going to start being more like Mr. Rogers.
Good luck.
Why are y'all both ganging up on me? I can't talk to you. I can't talk to you. I can't talk to any of you guys. It's facebook.com/TGS Alan Mosley. Twitter is @Alan and Mosley. Our website's thegoldstandardpodcast.com. Support us on Patreon, which is patreon.com/TGS Alan Mosley. Suzanne, where can people follow you and your work?
SuzanneCSherman.com. There's a link for our SoundCloud shows. You can get them on download, and my articles and blogs are all on the same fun-filled page. Thank you.
There you go. That's everything. Guys, please be careful if you're going to be driving.
Yep.
If you're going to be drinking, at least drive slower.
Right.
At least drive slower. But have a good Thanksgiving, and we will see you next week.